Well, we've got tariff traumas, robotic rivalries, and flourishing in Florida. You're watching Techstrong Gang. We'll be back in a minute. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Techstrong Gang. We've got a strong lineup today. We're talking about a hot topic, though, so stay tuned. I want to introduce our guests first. Camberley Bates, who's a chief technology advisor for the Futurum Group, is joining us once again from, I assume you're in Colorado. Is that correct?
I'm in Colorado. Yes, I am.
All right. And then Mitch Ashley, I can tell by the guitars, is in Colorado.
That is a dead giveaway. In Colorado, in my studio/music room.
And then Bonnie Schneider is home in Florida, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm in Boca Raton, Florida. Great to be joining you today.
All right. And I might be the odd one out. I'm actually not home. I'm in the west of Ireland. So this is a new venue for the Techstrong Gang. We'll see how it all goes. We're going to talk about tariffs. They're on everybody's mind lately. I think they've been dominating everything in Wall Street, and folks are trying to figure out, well, what does this mean and where do we go from here? And I know IT people, some of the smart ones anyway, have been thinking about this issue for a while. Camberley, do folks need to start loading up on parts and laptops and servers now because the cost of these things are about to go up considerably, or is this going to be a blip?
Well, I'm kind of waiting to see what's happened in the next 36 hours because the noise that was coming out of NDC over the weekend was that we were going to see quite a bit of people stand down, which means that we stand down as well. This seems to be a massive negotiating position as well. So I'm on a positive side as opposed to others that I know that are like in the mess of like, even though, of course, yes, everybody's investments kind of took a hit last week, and we're probably going to still get some hit this week personally. So you can go on that. That's not investment advice at all. But one of our guys at Futurum did a really good job of putting a piece together that was talking about the actions that folks like HPE, Dell, Cisco, NetApp, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other people had already taken going into this. So like any executive does, you always have a list of what are the risks that are happening, what are the actions you're going to take, what are you going to do around that? And that's, you plan for that. And they should have been planning for this since the election, since this has been on President Trump's minds for decades. This is nothing new. So I think with that, what we're going to, many of them have already put contracts in place. They're looking at how that changes. Some of them are not even going to raise their prices. So I think it really varies between who they're negotiating with and what the issues are. But there are some definite decisions that have to be made. And, as you're getting into, if you have an immediate purchase right now, that's going to be the tough position. That's going to be the tough place to play out because you really don't know where this is going to land out. Hopefully, it's going to land out to the point that we're not as injured as some of the people are thinking we are going into it.
Mm-hmm. Mitch, every now and again, there is a downturn in the economy. We've seen these things before, and the boss usually turns to IT and says something to the effect of sweat those assets longer. So can we kind of live longer on the infrastructure we have and make it more efficient? I wonder, we've talked about on previous shows that, well, the utilization rates on a lot of that infrastructure is not so high in the first place.
Well, even after COVID and we need more productivity from our developers cost, this constraint around finances in IT, and certainly 2008 and COVID itself. Yeah, that always happens, and I'm sure they're expecting it. Hopefully, if you've been in IT, to expect that. I think where the bigger impact is the longer this goes on, the greater that affects the supply chains of products coming out of other countries. So, if we exhaust within the supply chain now, for example, doing a laptop refresh for, AI powered laptops or whatever it might be, server technology, then when that supply chain exhausts, those people tend to either shift to other businesses or go out of business. And we're back like we were in 2008, where it took 2-3 years to really build back the supply chain. And in this case, we've got not just disruption, but is the trust in the US still there? Are we willing to kind of go down this path again? We got jilted at the altar in 2025. Do we want to really sign up for that possibility again? So I think that's the really complex part of it. And Camberley, as you said, this decision to pull that trigger, I want cash, or do I make that investment now while it's still possible, is a big dilemma.
I agree on that. What Camberley said about the 36 hours. I think a lot is going to come out today and tomorrow from probably from the administration of any of these deals. Apparently, they said over the weekend 50 countries have already come forward, and maybe it's more than that now. I'm not sure, but I think that announcements like that with more details, specifics, would help the situation a little bit calm down right now from the panic that's ensued. And regarding the IT community, one of the things I think is interesting just from the sustainability angle is we've been talking a lot about how sustainability measures in with good financial decisions in terms of being more efficient. So it'd be interesting to see if people within that sustainability community in IT are saying, well, this is a time where we really need to be more efficient with our energy and refocus on that. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm going to be looking for those signals from that community today.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because I'm here in Europe, and so the conversation on this side is cautious. They are evaluating what the real impact is going to be, and they're considering their options and how much they want to have a hardcore fight about this or escalate it further. And not everybody is on the same page. The French are kind of being more aggressive about it. The Irish are urging caution. However, um, Ireland's big trade with the U.S. is in pharmaceuticals, and guess what's exempted from this here tariff thing? So, no wonder they're being a little more cautious. So there's a
And
lot of
corporate
things.
headquarters and all the
Yeah.
companies move there.
Yeah. So, but Camberley, a lot of business executives will look at this situation and uncertainty equals caution. So no matter what happens here, will there be at least some sort of chilling effect on buying motions because everybody's going to freeze while we wait to see how long this might play out?
I don't have a good answer to that one. And that's going to be clouded, unfortunately, by my own personal feelings, is that we will wade through this and wait. And actually, I'm in the process of buying a car. Here we go. Okay. So let's talk about it. So I'm like in the middle of this thing, like going, okay, so what does this mean? And how does this impact that kind of thing? So, and I'm proceeding ahead with that. And part of it is saying, okay, so am I going to pay when I say I'm going to be paying? Some of these folks are saying they're going to hold the course with terms of the pricing. They're not going to raise the prices immediately. So I think in each and every purchase, the conversation has to happen between what they're doing and the vendor that they're going to be buying from. Because I think it varies that much between, it's not, we see this blanket ubiquitous 34, 37% that's raising, but when you dig down into the numbers, there's variations all over the place. I mean, it's everywhere. You think about how NAFTA does not, anything that's under NAFTA right now doesn't apply to this. That's auto parts. That's all kinds of stuff. So how does that do to the supply chain? So I think there's just to have an absolute statement about this is what's happening. My costs are going to be 30% more. I think you have to have open conversations with the sales rep, the sales executives at the vendors that you're purchasing your asset from, what the plan is, how they're managing it. And I think that it's an opportunity to negotiate, possibly, right? You want me to buy it now, this quarter? Thank you very much. Give me another 5% discount. Thank you very much. It's an opportunity to negotiate. It's also an opportunity to, create stronger relationships and long-term relationships.
You're not buying a Range Rover perchance because they announced that they're suspending shipments to the United States. So just in case you are buying a car.
No, I'm working on a BMW, which I said I would never do a BMW, but here I am working on a BMW, replacing my convertible, which is like 13 years old. So I so many options for that.
Crossing our fingers for you again, really.
All right. 13 years. Talk about sweating an asset. That's impressive.
I sweat my car assets, believe me.
Yep. Getting that value.
Mitch, one of the things that will happen, though, is places like China will look to become less dependent upon the US. And as they reallocate maybe where they're sending parts and demand for, it might be harder in the future. The supply chains may be extended longer because a lot of those companies will be like, well, we're going to prioritize trade with whether it's Europe or Africa or Australia or wherever over the US. So there could be some lasting implications here in terms of, just who's on the favored trading nation list.
Very much so, because with a slowdown, because a slowdown in orders, right? Or you stretch out like Camberley's 13 years for that convertible. Instead of 6 years, we're going to get 13 out of this. Instead of ordering the entree, we'll order a small plate off the off the appetizers. So that's what happens, and of course, the bigger deals will get better economics. So maybe Europe and others will get more favorable deals because China wants to push more product their way. Now, that said, what's the economic impact in those environments? Is there any kind of a slowdown globally, and how's that happen? So I just think it's you kind of have to stay very fluid in this environment. In Alex Smith's report that Camberley mentioned, really good report on the futurumgroup.com site. Being fluid, kind of going by the moment. I think we're back to monthly and quarterly budgets. You remember we were there not too long ago, a year or so, where when us talking to customers, they didn't know what their budget was past a quarter, maybe even shorter time frame than that, almost on an ask zero-based budgeting basis. We could be headed that way as well.
Bonnie, walk me through this logic a little bit, but who could be really happy about all this? The people who are building refurbished equipment, because they're going to be like, hey, more demand, because people are going to be like, I can't find new gear. I'll go with the refurbished stuff. This could turn out to be great for the climate.
Yeah, I absolutely. And those areas are just growing so much. I did a report on Human IT that resells their refurbished equipment, but at a great rate for people in need, which is a really worthy cause. And then, of course, you have HP with HP Renew Solutions. That's very big for them and very successful, where they're not only just reselling, but they're helping the whole process. They pick it up, they do everything, and they refurbish it themselves with the guarantee that it still works well. So I agree, this is only going to help, especially as there is going to be this uncertainty and this frozen moment where, well, what do we do? We can't really buy anything right now. All right, what do we have? Can we fix it? Can we keep it living longer? I agree. I think this is going to be a moment for that, but we'll see, because this is the different type of administration where every hour something different happens. So we'll see how the next 36 hours goes, how long this will all last with the tariffs. I've heard everything, this is going to be for sure for months, for weeks, to this could end this week. So it's still uncertain. But in any case, it's always a good idea to refurbish and reuse devices as much as possible.
Camberley, do you think also that there will be further exemptions, right? We've seen, TMSC show up at the White House and pledge a bunch of money to build some plants here. And funny thing is, we need a lot of those GPUs that they happen to make in Taiwan to drive our AI stuff, which is kind of important to us as a country. So will some rational thought get selectively applied to maybe some tariffs may not be as aggressively enforced as others?
So I think so. I listened to this last week, both Howard Lutnick, who is the Secretary of the Department of Commerce. He was also the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, so no slack. And he's been part of this transition team and involved with this entire process for quite some time. So it's not, we see the end result of something that's been going on for 6 months or something like that. And he's talking about how, those people are coming to the table and negotiating to bring things. I mean, the entire purpose of this process is to bring manufacturing back on-prem, and to increase the manufacturing jobs, to lessen our dependency that we saw very clearly in 2020 on overseas, and what that. So that takes a long time to happen. And he's talking about how there is this transition period of the tariffs to the building out to the labor force that would have to be available in order to, do the manufacturing. Manufacturing is going to be more robotic than it is overseas. So maybe Bonnie is going to be cleaner or more respectful of the people than what we've seen in some of the overseas manufacturing. So, this is not in the next 30 days. This is a direction that somebody they're trying to lay out. That is a many, many years long direction to get to where they're talking about, which is manufacturing jobs, less dependency on overseas.
Well, and there's a lot of caveats at play here, right? Whether Congress stays on board is unknown. Meanwhile, the Koch brothers have launched a lawsuit saying that the authority under which the president is using or applying those tariffs does not actually exist. So there'll be a court case winding through challenging the president's authority as a single person who will apply tariffs. And then we're probably also going to see folks decide that there could be somebody's just going to blink. And the issue that they're going to blink over is the same one we blinked over when Rutherford B. Hayes and Herbert Hoover tried the same thing. And you're staring suddenly at the potential of something that feels more like a depression than a recession. The average person in the street's not going to actually play for that. And last time I checked, the next election cycle for the midterms is less than 14, 15 months away now. So we'll see how this all turns out at the end of the day. Cross your fingers, everybody, and hope that it gets better before it gets worse, because the ride can get bumpy. We'll be back.
Get that BMW, Camberley. I might need a ride.
It's not. I'm ordering a new one, so we'll see how that goes. I keep in touch because they have to place the order, and then we got the other thing called the shipping container that has to happen. So there's probably all kinds of things that I'm going to get to see how this happens.
They have some awesome visualization software that you can at least watch your car go nowhere.
They have an app for me to track the manufacturing of the car.
Yeah, right. It's coming.
It's coming.
All right, folks, we're going to move on to our next topic. We'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back, and we're going to be talking about robots. Well, specifically, robots manufactured in the U.S. There's a group that's already calling for protection from unfair competition globally, namely pointing fingers at China. And this in itself is not necessarily net new, because we've been pointing fingers at China for undercutting pricing on cars and all kinds of stuff that's closing us out of not just the Chinese market, but Australia and other places. So my question to you, and I'll start with Mitch on this one, I guess, is this, too familiar a ring to it? And if this is the case, every time we turn around and manufacture something, we're being undercut by China. Can we win this thing? Because if I don't have enough market for U.S. Robots outside of U.S., I can't support a robot industry on U.S. sales alone. So how do we kind of get past all this stuff that's going on? Is there just a higher level conversation that needs to be had between adults? Because right now, if we're going to have just kind of a U.S. focused market for anything, I feel like we're in trouble.
Yeah, the irony of the timing of this, right? But we're closing ranks and putting tariffs in place and saying we want global markets for robotics. I'll ride the coattails of Camberley on the positive side of this. Things will work out. We'll move forward. People making money tends to drive action. So as that comes to the forefront, and Trump being able to make announcements about that, I think that will help loosen up some of the discussion about that. This is being compared, and it's happened with AI too, as another moonshot moment, right? That they're asking the federal government to declare this is, put a robot in everybody's home by whatever date, like the moonshot or getting to the moon. So I don't know if it's truly a moonshot moment. It may be, though, if you really believe the impact of AI is going to be that great. And coupled with that is delivery of AI is in robotics, right? Could be small processors, can be, physical robots we think of moving around, could be robotic automations, whether those factories that we're building, maybe we're going to build some of the factories with robotics rather than just inside of the factory. So I think the timing, the irony of it aside, it is a good time for us to really double down and get into robotics. Are we ever going to stop the Chinese from changing the value of their currency and manipulating that and, copying our stuff, all that kind of things? I'm not too optimistic about that happen, even with the tariffs in place. So just play in that world. That's the world we live in.
I'll play the other side of this though. We're already walking around flipping over our routers to make sure that they don't say made in China on it. So what are we going to do with robots that are made in China? Because we don't understand for sure that, they're not going to be embedded with all kinds of nasty firmware. And, if you think your router spying on you is a problem, wait till a robot is showing up in your worker in your house and sharing all kinds of stuff. So Camberley, do we need to look at robots maybe differently than we have other things that we have manufactured in the past in China?
So I'm thinking through, we have Alexa in our house, or some people do. I don't want it listening to me. You have Ring watching your door. You have Roomba rolling around your house. And Lord only knows what else that you have running around your house that has a element of technology that has the ability to do whatever we're worrying about in terms of what these other robotics can do. It's already there. So if you're like worried about what this could possibly do in the future, I'm sorry, you need to go button down your house then and figure out what you're doing. And the same thing goes with American manufacturing, American, companies or whatever. We have so much technology that's already placed in there. I don't know the robotics market. I know I saw we were going to talk about this, so I was looking up and saying, okay, so where are we at? What are the policies they're asking for? And I think there's two sides of it. One, from a manufacturing or development side, they're looking for policies around regulations that could stop the development of it. They're also looking for some investments. I think they're also looking for standardization. I think the industry can do that themselves without the government getting involved. Then on the other side of it, you're talking about, okay, so what can we do as consumers, whether or not it's a corporate consumer or an individual consumer, to protect our privacy, which I think is what you're talking about, Mike, is that privacy that opened the door. So I think there's a lot of pieces that have to do it, but it's not something that is new. We're already in the middle of this, everything being watched, heard, talked about, recorded, documented, whatever.
Mitch, what do you say? We get some firewalls together, install them on these robots? Well,
I think we're blowing this way out of proportion because we just let go two of our cybersecurity leaders. General Timothy Hugh, I think is his name, National Director of the NSA. So I have a recommendation. There's actually a really fine, tried and true method of protecting yourself around the home. And by the way, every TV has a camera and a microphone, and monitor, and who knows what else. So I think we'll see a run on buying electrical black tape that you put over those cameras and over those micro. That works really good. And you can spout the name of whatever voice automated device. They won't respond. It works pretty good. So just kind of let's go with the classic solution here.
All right. Well, if we're going to go old school, what do you say we just go, everybody build one room in their house that's their safe room, you just kind of isolate it from everything else in the house. It's just a place you go in the corner and, nothing in there is connected to much of anything. And God knows, maybe we'll start reading books. Holy
We'll
crap.
make our homes Faraday cages. Just build it properly. No issue.
It depends on how good these robots are, because everybody knows the experience of a parent with a kid. Let's say they say they're not listening, and then all of a sudden there's a reaction in the other room. Let's say if you're on the phone, that used to happen to me with my mother, and she's like, "I'm not listening," and then I'd say something funny, and I heard her laughing, and I'm like, "You are listening." So I think that these robots are you have to take into account. Camberley said that they, with all our devices, and of course we forgot this one, the phone. They're always listening. They're what we're typing on there. So I think that it'll depend on how they're programmed, but keeping all of our data private is going to continue to be a challenge. The thing about robots that'll be interesting, just like I don't want to say Alexa because I do have it and she is always listening, but what they say back to us, because I think that that's when people get more surprised, when it comes right back to them personally, when they hear something that they said or something they were searching on the internet, and then all of a sudden that ad pops up. That's just my own experience where people are shocked. Wow, how do they know this? So I think the robots might draw more attention to that, to people, more awareness of it as well.
I don't know. Our Alexa doesn't seem to be too smart. The only thing she says we need to build or restock our supply of is dog biscuits. So that's always on, the only thing she says, you need to put more. I think our dogs have figured out how to
Oh, that's
get
so
Alexa.
funny.
What exactly, though, does it mean to like have something that says made in USA on it these days? Because when I go look inside it, it may have been assembled here, but the parts seem to come from somewhere else anyway. And a lot of times they're coming from China, where where the motherboard was created, but the thing was technically made in the USA. So, Camberley, if we're going to be this kind of hardcore about things, do we need to be clear about what it means to be made in the USA or any other country for that matter?
Well, I think what you're getting back to is the concept of zero trust, and that if you look in the infrastructure build out, you have a principle of zero trust, that if I'm buying my server, if I'm buying my whatever I'm buying, how it's going, is the company that I'm buying from know exactly where all those pieces are coming from and how that gets to me. So I think that's the basis of that. Now, you're asking about on the consumer side, are we going to have that on the consumer side? I don't think so. But on the corporate side, they're definitely driving with that, and that is part of the CISO's responsibility. I had the privilege of listening fascinating presentation by this I was at the Mountain West Cybersecurity Task Force, which is put on by the Secret Service. It's a combination of everything from to local to FBI to Secret Service to vendors to whatever. And we get together about once a quarter. And they had presenting to us somebody from New York City. She was the person that came in to harden their IoT. And if you think of IoT, that's everything from the cameras that's in the tunnels to all the cameras that the police are wearing. I mean, it's everywhere. And what they went through, which is a model, actually, it's a model for other cities. If they can do it, anybody can do it in terms of how many devices they have. But what they went through and the processes and the principles they put together about how to acquire, signing off to saying, this is secure, we can deploy this out there, we don't have the exposure. Really, really interesting process of what they did in order to get through this. So hopefully we'll see more of that, especially as we get more and more into robotics, into the IoT world as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I could see a way as a consumer that you'll get the visibility that you're talking about. Mitch, walk me through this for a minute, but I expect in the not too distant future, I will take out my phone, I will take a picture of something, and an AI agent will come back and tell me the provenance of every component that's in that thing. I don't see why that's not doable.
That's realistic because they have to maintain that supply chain. It's just, does the AI get access to that? Maybe it goes out and scans Tom's hardware and sees what they found in the breakdown. Not sure. I don't know, man. I'm in a sassy mood today. Sorry. But it also, in my mind, it raises the importance of the software supply chain as well, right? and the security of that and where we're sourcing that from. Today, it's an international, everybody contributes open source world. And when I was at KubeCon last week, they introduced, you'll remember the name of it, the eco stack, whatever it was, of the European stack of software that didn't depend on the US for its kind of open source contributions for that. So it's already having an effect. And that you could argue is also corporately driven, because that stack's going to run in data centers and in the corporations and hypervisor or hyperscalers and people like that. So I think the software supply chain is going to get a lot more attention as well.
I think you're right. And you're seeing a lot of chatter in the open source community among the maintainers about not taking code from people they don't know. Now, it's equally troubling that they haven't taken code from people they don't know for a long time, but at least they kind of recognize that this is an issue, and they are working with people to kind of say, these are best practices for building this stuff, because you need to have it be not just people you know, but it has to be signed, and you have to be able to trace where it came from. So I'm hoping the software situation gets better. I kind of feel like maybe we were a little freewheeling there for a while. Maybe it's, roughly the equivalent of a disco era in the 1970s, where people weren't as discriminating. But here we are now in the open source world is kind of maturing. So is that where we are, Mitch?
I just want to know what you were doing in the 70s. Brought that reference up. But anyway, I was going to high school, but that's a whole nother nothing like the disco era. But, I think to your point, Mike, this is causing us to examine everything. Kind of, well, what about this, right? What about the IoT? What about our stack, corporate software stack? What about devices that we're buying, and should zero trust be in there? Yeah, and I'm not saying that suddenly we aren't going to buy anything if it's not trusted, but it does raise the level, especially in a corporate buying scenario, of requiring provenance of where things came from, both physical devices as well as software. Now you added to it of, well, there's also tariffs. So did the things that should have been tariffed, were they, or did they sneak into the country through, undetected or black market or whatever? And now suddenly you bought, 5,000 servers for your data centers across the world, and you owe us some extra money because somebody didn't pay their tariffs on that.
Yeah, well, I'm actually trying to figure out where software sits in that tariff spectrum, because technically services are not counted in these equations for the tariff, right? So it's basically all hard goods. And software, is that a service or is that a good? I don't know. You have any thoughts?
It's a good service. I'm happy with it. No, I mean, software is a product. It's a product. It's a thing. It's the thing you ship. I mean, it's taken a different form over time. Used to be shipped on physical things, discs and on drives and things, but now it's delivered over the internet, just like any other service. So it's a service.
All right. Therefore, it is exempt from tariffs. Awesome. Will you run for Congress? It would be good.
I'll be issuing an executive order this afternoon stating.
There you go. All right. Mitch Ashley, free services. Here we go.
Sassy.
All right. Well, folks, I don't know how this whole robotic thing is going to turn out, but I would just say that this is a different class of things that are being manufactured that are unlike any other thing that we've ever got from any other country somewhere else. So a little more caution might be warranted. We'll be back in a minute.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Recently, I was at Emerge Americas in Miami talking to tech moguls, tech startup founders, and it was interesting to talk to someone that speaks to these folks really in their early stages. I had the opportunity to chat with Charlie Esnall, who's the CEO of Mana Tech, which is a very popular spot for entrepreneurs in the South Florida area, but also internationally, since a lot of them are coming in from other countries. So here's a little bit about what he said of the areas of interest for these entrepreneurs and where they're finding success. I'm here with Charlie Esnall, who is the CEO of Monatech in Miami here at Emerge Americas. And Charlie, it's great to have you on.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
Sure. Tell me about Monatech. I know it's designed for entrepreneurs, but a lot of people might not be familiar with the concept. Tell me about what it is and how you got it started.
Sure. Manatech is an entrepreneurship hub that we're building in downtown Miami. It's part of the vision of Moishe Mana, who owns now 72 properties in the downtown area of Miami. It's a very historical area that we are revitalizing the whole neighborhood with a focus in technology and innovation. And Manatech focuses on supporting entrepreneurs, connecting them through, mainly we do events. We had 130 events last year. We also bring companies from all over the world to Miami. Last year we brought 120 companies from 19 countries. And we also give them support with mentoring and connections in the ecosystem. So in essence, we're like the door of entry into the ecosystem here in Miami.
It is called Monatech. Do you have a lot of companies that are involved in technology?
Yeah, all of them. All of them are tech entrepreneurs, startups in different stages, and also from everywhere in the world, because Miami is becoming a global tech hub. That's our goal also, to support Miami in that path to be the place to go for anybody that is international that wants to come to the US. They should come to Miami first.
Since you're covering the international tech scene, I'd be curious what kind of trends you're seeing. I know we're seeing a lot of AI and quantum here. Are you seeing that within your entrepreneurial community as well?
Definitely. I think that AI in particular leveled the play a little bit for anybody in the world, because it's such a new technology that is out there that all the creators are bringing up solutions that it doesn't matter where you're. You can be in Italy, you can be in Argentina, and you can come up with something that is really new and innovative. So I think that AI is breaking the ground there. And then anything that has to do with Miami as a tech hub as well. Miami, we're a lot about health tech, a lot of fintech as well. Climate tech is the new that is coming to Miami now. So those are the verticals that we see that are more, focused in Miami now.
That's great. Yeah, I know that climate tech is talked about here in South Florida because of the location. Are you seeing any more innovation in that space?
Definitely, and also not only innovation, but a push by the whole community to make it happen, because we know that if we don't do something in Miami, we're going to be underwater at some point. So, there's accelerators like the Seaworth Collective that does that focuses exclusively on solutions for water. There's also now a push from even the federal government has provided some funding through the EDA to the Miami-Dade County to establish a risk resilience tech hub. And that money is now flowing to FIU, like to universities and to other players, so that we can create really an ecosystem to support all these innovators in finding solutions to make the planet livable in the future.
A lot of people that are watching this work in tech, and maybe they have an idea, eventually they want to be an entrepreneur or part of some sort of entrepreneurial team. What's your advice for people that are thinking about making this move?
Definitely reach out to your community. There's a lot of support from different actors. You have accelerators, you have government programs. Connect with us, of course, because we do that. We support entrepreneurs from the earlier stage to the later stages. We have physical spaces also, like co-working spaces where the community gathers. This week we had over 10 events in just 1 week where we're connecting all these people. So I think it's network, go out there, talk to people, talk to founders that have done it before, because most of the people that have gone through their entrepreneurial journey, they're willing to give back and support you. So let's just go out there, on LinkedIn, on your real life, go out to events and talk to people and get you out of your comfort zone, and you'll find the support that you need.
Charlie Esnall, thank you so much, CEO of Monatech. It's great to be speaking with you here at Emerge Americas, and I'll be following all the excitement with Monatech and all the great entrepreneurs that you're supporting.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
One of the areas he said that's particularly popular in Miami, which of course interests me, is climate tech, because of the effects of climate change really being felt in that area. I remember when I was studying climate change more in depth on a science level, it was often said that Miami was the bellwether for climate change with sea level rise and things like that. So it's not surprising that that's a strong area of focus as well with the ocean and the blue economy that's down in this region. But it's also interesting, of course, that all of Manitech's entrepreneurs are in tech and, of course, in AI, which was heavily represented at this conference for AI and quantum. So it is kind of interesting to see where the younger entrepreneurs are going with their ideas and which ones are successful and how they're connecting internationally right here in America.
I think this is the beginning of something larger. I think there's a lot of uh, entrepreneurs who are not excited about doing business with VCs in Northern California, flat out. There's too much political noise in that climate. There's too many opinions that borderline on arrogant. And a lot of them are like, hey, at the end of the day, I have to set up 3 different companies successfully to actually have a formula where I'm going to make enough money to become a multimillionaire off my efforts. Because, a lot of times what they're left with after all that negotiation with those VCs is a nickel, at least on their first startup and maybe even their second. So I don't know, Camberley, maybe I'm crazy, but is there, an opportunity here to diversify, at least geographically, where innovation is being driven from?
Well, we started doing that a long time ago, especially in Boulder. Well over 12 years ago or so, Techstars started here in Boulder with Bradfield. And that expanded across the United States. So we had this Techstar, which is, essentially what that was early on. It was, a bunch of 20-year-olds that were sleeping on couches getting, a few $100,000 to develop something. And that did go on to spawn a lot of industry here in Boulder that got bought by the Microsofts, the Googles, the Yahoos, the Facebooks, etc. So it spun our stuff. So then they spread it out. And that was, almost a lot of the big cities where those Techstars were coming. So I think we've already done that. I think what I'm hearing from Bonnie, it sounds like there's another slice there because this group had a very, very, very focused on Silicon Valley because that's where their ties are. Hopefully Manitech has got ties into other places. And not just, those companies that are out of Silicon Valley that can purchase them. And I think that's probably true because, clean tech is spawning all over the place. It is not a Silicon Valley dominated industry.
And
Mitch,
shout out
that
to Dave,
felt means something to you.
and I was going to say, shout out to David Cohen, by the way, at Techstars. Run Techstars along the section. Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Well, and David Cohen is now running Techstars back again. So they brought Techstars. Yes, he is all now leading it. Brad is not, but Brad and David started it together. You're right, Mitch. And now Techstars has been brought back from the headquarters to back here, and David is now in the lead.
Mitch, don't you have history with these people, Bradfeld and crew?
I do, yes. But we're recording this, so I can't talk about it. What can I say? No, no. Brad was an investor in a couple of companies that I was in. Wonderful person, and he really has contributed a lot to the community. And I don't know how Brad and David got connected, but I was an advisor for a short period of time with Techstars, kind of in the early days. And it was a lot like sleeping in the dorm room, saying, okay, now get up and present what you're doing. This is the next generation of that. And what stood out to me, and Bonnie, I'm curious if this came up in your conversation with Charlie, is the industries that they're focusing on: fintech, healthcare, climate. Those are industries that are tough to break into. They've got entrenched players, and just don't go into healthcare and say, I've got I've got the next better mousetrap. Buy mine instead, right? They closely control a lot of those product ecosystems and very large contracts and vendors. So a lot of what companies struggle with, startups, is how to get in to the markets because they just don't have the chops to get get to that level where they can actually get in front of customers and deliver their products.
That's a great point because I took a walk through. I was curious, what are these companies doing? And in order to break in, it seems like a lot of the ones, especially the ones in health tech, and even just in AI in general, were building on already successful solutions, and coming up with building on what was already successful. And it seemed to me that that was a way that they could take, whether it was for banking or for things that we kind of know that are happening, like those full body scans that are able to kind of predict the future of health, or how to manage healthcare technology between doctors. I saw a lot of that kind of stuff. So it seems like they're building on solutions that we know are successful. And the one thing that Charlie was talking about is that the international, which is funny because this was before the tariff announcements really came full force, but about the international market, and the especially South America, which is very connected to the South Florida region, of trying to get into this U.S. market. And that's been interesting. I also heard a lot of chatter about the venture capital and having a separate community in South Florida away from Silicon Valley. I heard one founder, or maybe he was a venture capitalist, but speak. And one of the things he said was the distance between West Palm Beach, or maybe it was Jupiter to Miami, is like Silicon Valley to San Francisco. Like, they're really trying to create a community here for that as well. And finally, I just want to put a note. I didn't know about the connection with Techstars, but another entrepreneur that I have yet to interview on camera, but I've spoken to him because he's based in Boca Raton, and he and I both spoke at a conference in September, is a company called Carbon Light, and they do carbon clean tech solutions for concrete, where they can create this concrete that doesn't have a carbon, absorbs carbon. It's very successful. And one of the things he had mentioned to me was they were in Techstars, and after being selected for Techstars, I said, how do you get new clients? He's like, well, once you're in Techstars, they come to you. So it was pretty cool, to understand all that. So that was just an aside. I thought that it's still, obviously very impactful. And there it is, a clean tech solution that was recently in that program and doing really well.
I don't think a lot of these startups get enough credit sometimes because, and this might be an exaggeration, but the more I think about it, the more I think it's probably true, is any company that I've seen in the tech sector that's more than 10 years starts to fall off the innovation curve, right? And they wind up buying more companies than they do organically coming up with some new idea. And I guess that's part of the way the ecosystem works. But I feel like, Camberley, if it wasn't for all these little startups pushing them along, they would just milk the existing technology forever, and the pace of innovation would be much slower than it is.
That would be the premise of an innovator's dilemma. And what pushes us, to be better is that competition. It's that reinvention of yourself is critically important. And hopefully we're seeing that in some of the companies. That's what Intel is going through right now, reinventing themselves again. Well, can they do that? They've done it multiple times, and that's why they lasted for as long as they did. Microsoft doing the same thing, reinventing. IBM, Lordy, we've seen them go through whatever. And, I was there when, in the 1990s when, they toppled it upside down and redid it and re-put themselves back on their feet. And then we saw them falter again, and now seemingly right back in. They have, and I'll make this one comment. Some of these big companies, one of the things I've always looked at is, what's the R&D really look like? Do they have true R&D, research and development? Because if you don't have that, you will not stay ahead. And what we do see sometimes with some of these companies, and how do you take that R&D and move it into productization and delivery? Some of these companies, and I'm not going to name them out right now, but they say they have R&D, but they're not really. They're not really doing that investment. They're your development. They're not research. And so I think personally, it's to see how they evolve. It's important to see where those what they're doing and how they're going at it.
A lot of those startups come from people who were in those big corporations that they can't create what they want to create. Even companies that tried to create sort of a skunk work projects, put them off to the side and keep them away from the corporate antibodies that will, attack them and try to make them yield to whatever policies. That's tough to do in any company. And so many people spin out, jump out, do their own thing, sometimes even sell their company back to the same, like a jump out of Cisco, sell it back to Cisco. The whole startup ecosystem is vital to our innovation. Even if companies are really good, even if companies have world-class research, there's things you can do in a startup you cannot do in a big company. How many executives are going to sign up for a 2-year or 3-year journey to get product market fit right on a not much. Not going to help me with this quarterly earnings. So I'm expecting when we develop that product, to your point, Camberley, that we're going to be making some money at it and being profitable at some point in time. So I love anything that nurtures the entrepreneur in people. It gives them an opportunity to flourish and spread their wings and try. And it's a fun thing to do. It's a risky thing to do, but a lot of great things get created.
Mitch, I want to add another plank to your presidential campaign. Tariff exemptions for startups. What do you say?
I'm all for it. I think just stay low, fly under the radar, people.
But I wonder though, and Bonnie, you were talking to these folks. Do you feel like we as a national government do enough to kind of foster the innovation for these folks? Because it's hard launching these companies and kind of making them work. And a lot of times, the founders are not exactly living large for the 3 years that they're investing in these things. So, as a country, as a government, is there more we should be doing?
Well, that's a great question because there was in the last administration, especially in the area of climate, there was a lot of grants and things like that through NOAA and climate tech. We were seeing, I know a lot just from my book and from other people I know that were in that industry and benefiting from it. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty now, at least in that space, about what's going to happen, with that area. But absolutely, and I'm hopeful that there will be for these entrepreneurs because I've been to this conference now twice now, and it's the number of participants are growing in terms of companies coming from all over and looking to get exposure. So hopefully the answer will be yes. But as we've been starting off the show, we're ending the show as well with a little uncertainty in the air.
There you go. And I would just point out, folks, or at least remind you all that many, many industries, not just tech ones, got started because some grant from the U.S. government helped fund a research project that gave birth to a whole range of things that never would have happened any other way. Hey, folks, I think we're going to end it there. I want to thank everybody for sharing their thoughts and their insights today. It was awesome as usual. Of course, there's a huge, great lineup of Techstrong TV content right behind us. We encourage you all to stay tuned for that as well. Until then, we'll see you next time.